The Champions League has been absolutely insane this season, and with the round of 16 coming up, I thought that this would be the perfect time to talk about how crazy this Champions League has been so far. Obviously, this is the first Champions League with a new format, which does introduce more teams and also introduces a league phase rather than the traditional group stage. But in my opinion, the playoff round that just finished has been absolutely crazy. So without further ado, let's talk about it. First of all, I do want to say that I wasn't particularly a big fan of the league phase, especially that final day where all the teams were playing at the same time. In my opinion, it was a little bit crazy, and I do prefer the traditional group stage. But in my opinion, the playoff round, which just finished, was absolutely insane, and there were some crazy matchups. The first matchup that I want to talk about was the Real Madrid versus Man City matchup, which is a matchup that we've gotten for the last 4 years in a row. But in my opinion, this was one of the craziest matchups in the playoff round. Obviously, in the first leg, Man City were playing at home and they were leading 2 separate times in that game. But obviously, in typical Real Madrid fashion, they ended up scoring 2 late goals to win that game away 3-2, and it was an incredible match. And now for the second match, coming back to Madrid, it was always going to be tough for Man City. Real Madrid ended up scoring 3 goals, with Manchester City only scoring 1, which was a late goal by Gonzalez. But we saw some crazy moments in this game as Mbappe ended up getting a hat-trick, and we all saw him making fun of Gvardiol and him making fun of the keeper as he chipped him. Honestly, there was some crazy memes coming out of that game, and in my opinion, it was just a crazy matchup. Moving on to the next thing that I think surprised a lot of people. 3 out of the 4 Serie A teams that were still in the Champions League ended up getting knocked out. Atalanta, Juventus, and also AC Milan all lost their ties, which was really unexpected. First of all, I do want to talk about the Atalanta versus Club Brugge tie, because there was a very controversial decision in the first leg, which ended up the Club Brugge winning that game 2-1 as they scored a 94th minute penalty. But this penalty decision was very controversial, and a lot of people are calling it the worst penalty decision in UEFA history. Basically what happened is Club Brugge were on the attack and there was a loose ball in the box. Atalanta's defender Hien was shielding the ball with his hands up, and he ended up hitting the attacker in the chin with his hand while he was shielding the ball. Now, there was barely any contact. The Club Brugge attacker ended up going down, holding his face like he just got punched in the face, but there was barely any contact. Obviously, the referee did call it as a penalty, but VAR could not overturn the penalty as there was still minimal contact, and therefore the penalty was given and Club Brugge did end up winning the game. But in my opinion, and in most people's opinion, that was never ever a penalty. But in the end, Club Brugge did deserve to advance, as in the next game, Atalanta were playing at home. Club Brugge ended up destroying them, beating them 3-1, and we saw Rafael Toloi, the captain of Atalanta, completely freak the fuck out. He tried to throw the ball at the Club Brugge player, completely missed, ended up hitting him in the back, and honestly, it was just a horrible look for Atalanta. We saw Gasperini clown Ademola Lookman for his missed penalty, and it was just complete chaos on the Atalanta side. Moving on to Juventus, they were coming up against PSV, and they did win the first match at home 2-1, but in the second match, PSV were completely dominant. Juventus played very poorly. PSV ended up winning that game 3-1, and we saw arguably one of the coldest celebrations in football. See no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. That was the celebration by Noah Lang, Johan Bakayoko, and Ryan Flamingo as they ended up beating Juventus 3-1, and in my opinion, that was a very impressive result by PSV. And finally, the third Italian team to be knocked out was AC Milan, as they ended up losing to Feyenoord. In the first game, it was a complete shit show by Maignan. He ended up conceding a goal in the 3rd minute, which really he should have definitely saved. And in the second match, both teams were very level. It ended in a 1-1 draw, and on aggregate, Feyenoord do advance. Moving on from the disappointment of the Italian teams, I have to talk about Bayern Munich against Celtic, which was a very close tie, much closer than what a lot of people expected. Starting with the first leg, which was being played at Celtic Park, Celtic ended up scoring very early on in the first few minutes, but it was eventually ruled out for offside. But in my opinion, if that goal was onside, I think Celtic probably could have won this game. And in the second leg, Bayern Munich did have the home advantage, and it's fair to say that they were definitely dominant in that game. But they were not putting away their chances, and Celtic did end up scoring first in the 63rd minute to make it tied 2-2 on aggregate. And obviously it was going to go into overtime, but Alphonso Davies scored a 94th minute winner to put Bayern Munich up 3-2 on aggregate and have Bayern Munich advance into the round of 16. But it was a very, very good run by Celtic, and they were so close to beating Bayern Munich, which would have been a crazy upset. Moving on to the next matchup, I have to talk a little bit about the all-French matchup between Brest and PSG. Now, in my opinion, it was a little bit unfair that two French teams had to come up against each other in the playoff round, but it was a crazy matchup, and this was one of the most dominant performances in any matchup in Champions League history. PSG ended up beating Brest in the first leg 1-0, but in the second leg, when PSG were playing at home, they ended up beating Brest 7-0 to make it 10-0 on aggregate, which is one of the biggest aggregate scorelines we've ever seen in Champions League history. The only time where there has been a bigger deficit was in the Bayern Munich versus Sporting matchup in the 2008-2009 Champions League, where Bayern Munich ended up beating Sporting 12-1 on aggregate. Other than that, this is the second biggest deficit with a 10-goal difference across both legs, which is absolutely crazy. This just showed us how powerful PSG are, and even though they're not the same PSG that we've seen in recent years with superstars, with Mbappe, with amazing midfielders and amazing defenders, they are a very young team, but the chemistry, the manager, their tactics, and their ability to have so much energy and press for the whole game is something that we don't see that often. And in my opinion, PSG could definitely go very far in this Champions League. And even the other matchups in the playoff round, which I didn't specifically talk about, were also very entertaining. We saw Benfica beat AS Monaco 4-3 on aggregate with some incredible games, very close matchup. And we also saw Borussia Dortmund beat Sporting 3-0 across both legs, where now we see Serhou Guirassy as the top goal scorer in the Champions League, having scored 10 goals, while also getting 3 assists and also having the most goal contributions with 13 in total, which is very impressive. So what I'm trying to say is, no, I did not enjoy the league phase, and in my opinion, I do prefer the normal group stages. But I think that the playoff round, or the round of 32, whatever you want to call it, was very interesting, and it made for some very entertaining games. And I'm very excited to see what happens next season. Now, moving into the round of 16, we see some highly anticipated matchups. We see PSG coming up against Liverpool. We see a Madrid derby in the round of 16 with Real Madrid coming up against Atletico Madrid, which always guarantees entertainment. And we also see the two Bundesliga powerhouses, Bayern Munich and Bayer Leverkusen, already coming up against each other so early on in this Champions League campaign. And that is the end of this video, where I talked about how crazy this Champions League has been so far, and how, in my opinion, the round of 32 or playoff round was very entertaining, and I'm very excited to see it next season. If you guys are excited for all the round of 16 matches, especially the crazy matchups that I just mentioned, remember to leave a like on this video and leave a comment down below. And remember to stay tuned, because I will be uploading predictions for every single matchup throughout the rest of the Champions League. And as always, if you guys did enjoy this video, remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and stay tuned for more videos.